feel like when that kind of stuff happens, it's like the great T, big T is trying to not let this information go out into the world. That's what's going on. When you have technical difficulties putting on a very important interview, it's like Lipton and Unilever. They're like, no, we can't let those two talk. We can't let these two talk about these important things where people learn how to suss. You know what I mean? So give us your energy. Let's see if this is gonna work. Come on, Instagram. You're on our side. Oh yes, we did it. Okay.
Well, successful.
So I'm gonna lead down like this because I was asking Jeffrey to host it on his so that I could be seen, but that's okay. We'll have like a little campfire chat like this. So for those of you who are joining us, thank you so much for dealing with our video getting set up. We really appreciate it. And welcome to today's interview with the amazing Jeffrey McIntosh, Puer tea specialist, a friend that I trust very much with so much of the tea learning I've done, especially in Puer over the last few years. Many of you have already seen our interview with Jeffrey from the Puer Love Challenge. He has worked with a bazillion different tea projects in many different capacities. I trust this man. And we have him here today to talk about the method that underlied our One Tea Focus challenge for those of you who are joining us. I saw Joni and Joe and Jeremy, all the J's who finished the challenge. Welcome, Jeffrey, and thank you for introducing this to us.
Well, thank you. A lot of kind words there. I don't know if I can take full credit for all of them, but I appreciate it. This is a really fun challenge, and it's really exciting to see other people kind of adapt, learn from it, and then you kind of took it into your own and tried to adapt it and then spread the word and help others. So I think that's really cool. I think loose leaf tea, there's still a lot of uncharted territory. So more and more people like yourself are such a benefit to the tea community. And there's a lot of things in my own journey as well that I've kind of struggled and gone up and down, which I think many of you can all relate to. It's not always clear and easy to good and quality teas. So any methods we can adapt and add kind of to our experience or our portfolio of tools can be very beneficial. So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about my kind of experience with tea and how it all started. So many of you all know me. I'm a little bit crazy about puer now. It wasn't always that way. Many years ago, I was just like many of you. I would go and any new tea shop I heard, I'd go check it out. I ordered tea online. I ordered samples from everywhere. And this was 12, 13 years ago. And I started to build my own tea business. And I went to China, and I was fortunate and lucky enough to be able to have someone help me, guide me, learn the language, and then start sourcing teas, which nowadays is more easy than you could ever believe. And I started to bring in a lot of teas, and for many years, I would just drink teas casually. And the fact that I was drinking a loose leaf tea from another country, I already thought I was drinking very premium tea, maybe above the standard that most people have access to. And that may be true. There's not a lot of options in our grocery stores and local stores around. So I would purchase and drink teas, and I say, well, I'm drinking loose leaf tea. I have a teaware. I have a fancy kettle. I know a lot about tea. And I would say, I can open a tea business. And it's a great way to learn. I don't encourage opening a tea business. It's a fantastic way to learn. And I started to purchase a lot of teas and sell a lot of teas. And every day I would look for a new tea to try, a new flavor, a new sample, without really taking time to understand the actual tea I'm buying and drinking. Is it actually what it says it is? Where is it from? What is the raw material or soil used? How do I know that region grows their teas in what way? Why does certain green tea taste better than others? Why is some tea so expensive? Why is some tea with the same name have 100 different price points? And so I would say, well, this name is available. It's a pretty affordable price. I'll drink it. And I'm lucky because this is a good price. So we always need to think about technical analysis. And so as I started to grow, I started to get very sick because every day I would drink different teas. I would drink a red tea, a black tea, a white tea, a raw pour, all in the same day. I would do this for months up to a year. So I would always be like, oh, tea doesn't let me sleep. Tea affects my digestion. Oh, I think one of those teas I drank yesterday gave me a headache. Without adding any kind of tools to separate those experiences. Instead of saying, oh, that black tea gave me a headache, I would say tea gave me a headache. So I wasn't giving each tea an opportunity to reach its full potential. And tea is a little different than other types of beverages or food we may encounter in daily life. Tea needs time. You need to be very calm and focused. And I think that's why a lot of people like tea. It kind of takes you away from the hectic, stressful lifestyle we experience every day and gives you a moment of peace. And if it can give us that moment of peace, why don't we give it some time to tell us its story? So as years got on, I actually became very ill and sick. I had runny nose, I had horrible digestive problems, I was very kind of pale and green. And I said, I think I'm just drinking too much tea. I think I'm drinking too much raw puerh. It's not beneficial for my body. I was constantly extremely hungry, and I took a break from tea. And then as time went on, I kind of stopped drinking puerh entirely, and I thought it was not beneficial for my body. And I started to drink a little bit of green tea, a little bit of black tea. And when I reintroduced myself into tea, I would pick one tea and just drink it casually. And then as a few years went by, I found my love for puerh again, and I encountered old tea tree or ancient article tea tree. Now, I thought I had encountered that before, but this time I noticed when I drank this tea from old trees, it was calm, it was mellow, it was light. It was not a strong taste. So this kind of shocked me at first. How can a puerh be very light and soft and comfortable?
Right.
My experience, as you probably know too, a lot of puerhs are aggressive. And then I started to listen to a different set of people that were introducing me a different type of tea. And they started to say things like puerh tea that's grown naturally deep in the mountains from old tea trees without pesticides or fertilizers does not have a strong taste. It's very light. And this comes to another analogy about my alcohol analogy and my fragrance analogy, which is in the previous interview you can check out, that these teas are very light. And so then I just kind of, I don't know what happened. I just kind of transitioned. I only wanted to drink those teas. Maybe my body was craving those teas. Maybe mentally I was craving those teas. I just wanted that experience. Yes, it wasn't strong, powerful flavor, but it was very comfortable. It was a new experience I hadn't felt before. So I started to drink these teas very often for almost a year. And I've had a lot of friends and colleagues that I've drank tea with for almost a decade, and I wanted to share this new experience I've done. So first I started drinking all kinds of crazy tea, red, white, green, oolong teas from 5 different provinces of China. So crazy, having crazy tea sessions, getting a little sick, unsure of my origin, particularly probably puerh was the factor in that. And then I took a break, and then I came back to puerh. And I'm introducing this new kind of world that's soft and comfortable. And these are old tea trees. And I say, this is amazing. I can drink tea all day, every day, not affect my sleeping or work schedule, which is the complete polar opposite to what I thought tea was. And I wanted to share this experience. And I didn't really quite know why all these things were happening. So I wanted to reach out to some of my older friends and colleagues and said, try these teas. And they were a little expensive, so giving someone a 5-10 gram sample will put you down $20. So I put out some samples, and then I would hear back from my friends and be like, oh, this tea's not any different. This tea's just the same. I don't think this tea's so good. This tea doesn't have flavor. I drank this tea and I drank my 2 other puerhs in the same setting, and I don't think it's so special.
That's happened so many times, right? Yeah. Everything, yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
That's okay. And at that point, I'm shocked. I'm completely shocked. I say, how? This is so expensive. These teas are completely different. There has to be a way to introduce these people to this new type of tea. It's not to say that the teas they're drinking are bad. I just wanted to introduce them to this new type of tea. And so I thought for weeks. I didn't know what to do. I talked to my tea master. I started to drink these teas. And then I realized I hadn't really drank any of the teas I previously drank. I was only drinking these new old tea trees. So I said, I'll go back and I revisited one. And I was like, oh, it's awful. How could I drink this tea before? And then I called up some of my friends and I sent them samples again. And I said, here's enough samples for a week. Only drink this for a week. And then after that week, go back and drink their tea. So they started to do that. And many of you all also did that. And before I talk about kind of why the psychology of the method kind of developed, when we can talk a little bit about that, but that's how the origins of the story started. I wanted to introduce someone of quality. I'm interested to hear more about your kind of experience with the challenge and kind of everyone you're teaching and their experience with the challenge. And maybe you can talk a little bit on that, and then I'll talk about the psychology of that.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are joining us, we're asking Jeffrey to explain how he developed this method that we use for the challenge that we just hosted. It's the 1T Focus Challenge on Instagram. We called it 1T Focus because some people did 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 days even. But we derived it from Jeffrey's 3-day rule, which he just says simply, you know, if you like a puer and you want to invest in it again in the future, why not see if you can sit with it for 3 days, right? So the 3-day rule, which we turned into, you know, the 1T Focus Challenge. And a lot of us did. Jeffrey, I think 30 of us ended up completing at least 3 days.
Wow.
And in total, we had 100 cumulative days of 1T Focus across all tea types: white, green, oolong, black, and puer. So those of you who are here, congratulations for making it through. Ups and downs, you know, ups and downs. And before that, you know, I tested on our own with the jade leaves, which is what I'm drinking right now. Yeah, nice. I tried it on our own just to kind of like test drive it. And the thing is, for those of you listening, it's like, why we do this is not because we feel like, hey, the tea that, you know, a lot of people are drinking is bad. It's because I personally have felt, oh my God, how was I back in that room and I didn't notice that acid rain was falling on me and I didn't know, you know? It's like a natural progression to me that when I met Jeffrey and he had the same kind of experience, I'm like, this must be some kind of objective thing, right? Because Jeffrey and I didn't learn together for many years. We just, you know, in the times that our paths crisscrossed, we somehow had the same experience. And so we tried it, and like Jeffrey was saying, without him telling me, okay, after we had 3 days of this jade leaf, number one, I never got tired of it. Number two, I was craving it every day. And number three, like Jeffrey was saying, no matter what time of day I was drinking it, I was fine. So it's a 2019 shang. When you say 2019 shang, you're like, oh my God, like you can't drink that at night, you know, like you're not to drink that in the afternoon. On day 3, I remember Steven, without asking me, brewed up the jade leaves at 9 or 10 p.m. at night, a fresh batch. And I was like, oh my God, we got to sleep. What's wrong with you? You know, I was a little upset. But I didn't have any issue sleeping, you know? So I was shocked, and you know, that's why we put up the challenge, and that was our experience. For those of you who joined us, you know, maybe drop your experience in the challenge as well. So I did a second time now with all of you, all 30 of us, with a 1T Focus, and I tried a different tea. That was the thing is, it was okay. It didn't hurt me that much. But after 4 days, I was like, oh my God, me and this tea, you know, I can drink it once in a while, but I gotta go. I can't. I honestly was pretty upset, and, you know, just to be candid, pretty unstable and unhappy and uncomfortable. I had a lot of headaches. And the thing is, I'm not going to tell you which tea it was, because all of us have this tea, okay? All of us now in our cupboards, in our tea collections, have this tea. You know, it's a tea that seems okay on the surface, but if you let yourself do that 3, 4, 5 days, it might tell you something different. So that was my experience. Not by any means do I discourage sampling. I mean, sampling's amazing, right? But what does it mean if you can sit with a tea for 3, 4, 5 days, right? And so some of us had some ups and downs. One of the biggest things that we noticed is that people were having this craving during the challenge. Usually for their favorite teas. So for me, I was craving the jade leaves and also Taiwanese oolong, which a lot of Taiwanese oolong is pretty kind of, you know, but I get mine from my teacher and it's pretty clean. And I was like looking out the window and thinking, I wish I could have that tea. And a lot of us did. So I guess I could ask, you know, what is that craving mechanism? What is that?
So this is really great. All these experiences are good. And before we dive too deep into, we'll use words today like quality, low quality, and I want you to be very careful of these words. Everything we say is based off an opinion and experience, and there is caveats to everything. This world
Absolutely.
is, it has a lot of gray. There's a lot of things that can go differently. Every human being has a different body type. Each different type of tea and genre of tea sometimes can have a specific focus. This is why I love tea, and I think tea and coffee can go very well together. I think coffee has a specific purpose for maybe increasing energy, where tea, depending on the genre, can be used for a wide range of purposes. Calming down, relaxing, caffeination, stimulation. The point of separating this 3-day challenge is to make our bodies more sensitive and aware of what we're drinking, so when we encounter a new tea, we can fully understand the effects of that particular tea on our body. And yes, craving will come up a lot. And so after I gave those samples to a few of my colleagues and told them to do it for a week, and then after go back and drink some of the teas, about 80%, I gave about 25 different people, 80% immediately noticed the difference. Some did not. And that's okay. So with tea, why would you want to isolate the experience? With food is the same concept. This methodology came with food. I was actually in an Airbnb in California when I was drinking these teas, and I was getting really frustrated that my colleagues weren't understanding the teas I was drinking. And I was sitting in this Airbnb, and I was looking over at the counter, and I said, why don't people understand tea? And I see this person's tea cabinet, and there's 50 teas. There's 50 teas in there. And I look at that 50 teas, and I say, there's no way they're drinking the same tea every day. There's no way. Every tea is a different tea. And I immediately said, oh, that's why. If you eat food, let's say you eat fast food, how many of you can eat fast food every meal for a week? Probably not many. Maybe even after a day, you might feel sick or no urge to eat that food, right? There's no craving to eat that food. Now, there's a few types of body types where there may be exceptions for that. For most part, you will not have a beneficial, positive craving. Maybe it'll be full of a uncomfortable craving, but it will not be a positive craving. Where on the other side, if you were to eat organic food at home every day, even if it was relatively the same ingredients, you can still eat it comfortably. You may even want to continue eating it or craving to eating it because your body is craving that nutrition. It's clean, it's comfortable. So with tea, why don't we apply the same methodology? So by isolating that experiences, only drinking that single tea for 3 days, yes, you can change your diet, but by not introducing another tea, it may take a day or two before you know this tea is giving you what effect. Because you may have overlap. Maybe before you started this challenge, you drank a black tea, a white tea, and there's some overlap. Maybe that tea has some lasting effects. Tea is a powerful, powerful drink. So sometimes the caffeine can last a day or two. So by isolating that experience, on the 3rd day, you have a good indication. Is it a pleasant experience? How is it affecting my body? How overall do I feel calm or not? And then on the 4th or 5th day, you may want to continue, which some of you did, or you may not want to continue. If you don't want to continue, you definitely don't want to force yourself to keep drinking that tea. If there's any kind of uncomfortable feeling, maybe stop and switch teas and understand that this tea is giving you a different effect. Now, craving. Why would I crave something? And I'll share a story with you all. So one reason I got very sick was I was drinking too much green teas, raw pours, young raw pours from small bushes, which have a lot of caffeine, a lot of tea polyphenols. Also take a note, I am a vegetarian, so my diet affects my body type, which means I tend to be on the cooler side. That's more of a Chinese medicine thing. So what that just means is my body tends to feel cold in my hands and fingers. If my body was hot, overall your body would feel a little warm and you would not easily be able to feel cold. So cold bodies love the hot weather. Hot bodies love the colder weather. That's how you kind of separate it. So my body's towards the colder side. Green teas, unoxidized teas are more towards the cooling. Oxidized roasted teas are more towards the heating. So I'm vegetarian. I'm drinking lots of raw young bush teas, lots of caffeine, lots of tea polyphenols. My body became extremely cold. When your body gets extremely cold, it can affect blood circulation. Also, a lot of pesticides. And so I was at such a point, I never wanted to drink raw green tea ever again. I took a huge break, and I started to introduce into old trees, and I went to Yunnan and met my tea master, and they gave me a cup of old puer. and I drank this puer, and I'm still pale at this time. And she looks at me and said, "You look so sick, ho." and I said, "Oh, I don't drink raw puer tea anymore." And she looks at me, "Why? What kind of raw puer are you drinking?" And so she gives me some old tea, and I immediately start burping blah, 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 for like 5 minutes, blah, 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 burping so much. And my hands start to like sweat. It was like a weird sticky sweat because that tea was pushing out the cold in my body and adding heat to my stomach. And when I drank that tea, I was burping because I've drunk so much tea in my life. My body can recognize this tea is beneficial for my body. So sometimes with puer and some other teas, you may have a natural release of air, which is like a burp, because your body is almost identifying this tea for you. And this is why it's so important to do this 3-day rules, become more sensitive, and drink more tea and have more experiences, because it can help you identify what your body is identifying that you may not be able to identify. Of course, when I was burping, I didn't know. I was like, "Oh, this is good tea." I'm saying, "What's going on? I've never had this experience." Blah, 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 blah. And so she just goes, "What tea are you drinking?" And she asked me 2 important questions at that time. She said, "Do you think it's easy to do business and make a lot of money and be professional in this world?" And the second question she asked me is, "How do you know all the tea you're buying and reselling is exactly what you say it is?" Which also started me to think more about where the origin of the tea. And so by separating it, what we're doing is we're making our body become more sensitive. So if you spend 3 days with all of your new teas and you say, "Oh, wow, this tea is giving me a unique headache. This tea is giving me a little bit of jitteriness. This tea is giving me a little upset in the stomach." When you encounter future teas, you can apply the things you learned with those teas and say, "Oh, that may be a good indication for my body type, a positive experience, tea I want to drink, or tea I don't want to drink." Now, obviously, once you do the 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, week experience, you no longer need to do that. Once you've checked that tea off and put it into your collection, and you're taking teas from your collection, of course, you can revisit a variety of teas. So when your body is craving a tea, that most likely means that your body is more comfortable with that tea, you're more comfortable with that tea, so keep that in mind. Also, there's that aspect of caffeine. Maybe I drink a tea, it gives me a headache, but maybe it won't give me a headache all the time. That's okay. Tea is very beneficial for digestion. It is almost like a medicine. So if one day I do not eat and I drink tea, maybe I have a little uncomfortable reaction. But that same tea, I may eat a lot and drink that tea and be very comfortable. That's another reason why you're doing 3 days, so you can have a number of variables to make sure what you experience is actually from the tea and not something you did in your daily practice. So I think, and also, yeah, so I think that's one reason many people might have cravings.
Right. I know that some of us, I remember Delphine, Joe, Everest, a lot of us noted that something happened to us on day 1 that we weren't sure if it was a tea or not, but because we gave ourselves enough time to kind of isolate the thing, it was more clear. So if anything, it's like a confidence practice, whether what I say resonates with you or Jeffrey says resonates with you. If we say, "Oh, the jade leaves is amazing," but if you put that tea in your body and you say no, then you immediately can trust yourself better and not anyone else, right? Like that's what we want is, I don't care if Tea Master XYZ from 12 generations of Tea Master says this is good tea. If you put that in your body and you're like, no, then you're correct, So putting yourself in that kind of position. And it's not that, it's not a palate thing. It's not like, I'm not a super taster. I'm not a vegetarian like Jeffrey. I didn't grow up drinking, good tea or eating organic food, but it's just become this natural progression that even if I'm not looking for it, I've somehow come to the same conclusion, So, just as a guide for you guys, I've learned so much by trying to compare 2 different sources. And if, both me and Jeffrey are like, same background, same diet, same lifestyle, same everything. We went to the same school, same neighborhood, and we have the same conclusion, I don't know. But we have very different backgrounds, very different experiences, and yet we've come to the same conclusion. So use your judgment to try to test that out for yourself too. And I mean, we're here talking about it, and neither of us sell tea. So we're not trying to sell you anything, So it's been really
I want to touch on before we go to the next line item is what she said about trusting your own experience, this is so important with all teas. We want to become self-sufficient tea drinkers and tea buyers, because I know in today's world there is so much information. It is difficult to filter this information. The best filter is your own experience and study. So whenever you buy tea, you never want to buy tea based on someone else's recommendation, no matter how prestigious that person may be. Because even if it is a so-called valuable tea, if you purchase it a lot and you don't enjoy it yourself, no matter what's going to happen, if it ages and increases in value, you're not going to be able to enjoy it later anyway. So you should only be buying teas based on your own technical analysis, understanding, and enjoyment. And ultimately, you're going to have a far better experience and feel like you're using your money more beneficially.
Absolutely. And it's not that the vendors are trying to trick us or anything, you know, they are trusting their own intuition and their own judgments. We want to arm you with that same level or even better than some of the vendors, you know. I used to sell tea, and I can tell you that if I drank my own tea that I sold back then, I would not be able to drink it right now. So that's a truth for me, right?
Me too. No, and me maybe even more extreme. So it is common for people to go on journeys and learn, and that's okay to make mistakes along the way.
Right. So for those of you joining in, we were just talking about the method of the 3-day rule that we adapted for the One Tea Focus Challenge. Drinking just one tea and no other teas for at least 3 days, right? So we had a couple line questions here. You answered the question, is it possible for a tea to mellow out over time? I was asking this because there were some teas that, you know, just in my experience, okay? Some tea is just terrible. Like I take one sip and I just cannot drink another sip. This has happened to me. Like I'm literally at someone's house. They bust out this amazing 80s strung puer from whatever. And, you know, I take one sip, a tiny gongfu cup, okay? Tiny one. And I take one sip and I cannot continue, no matter what the pressure is in the group and as a guest to continue drinking. It's just that horrible to me. And then there are teas that are in the middle. So I was wondering if there are like, for example, there's a tea that I feel comfortable in most of my body, but it gives me a headache. Is it possible for that to change over time? And, you know, knowing that I've done it for 4 days and it's pretty consistent. Day 1, headache. Day 2, day 3, day 4, headache.
Most likely not. Outside of any category besides puer, and even puer included, most likely I have seen in my experience is that tea will always maintain those same characteristics from day 1. Whether it's aging or storing or vacuum sealed, it still has to work with the raw material of the quality it started with. It doesn't have any additional help, maybe some very slow post-fermentation. And that kind of jumps over to puer. Well, doesn't puer mellow out over time? And this is a very in-depth subject. Maybe you can learn more on my Patreon. So I'm just going to make it real simple and basic. With puer, there's 2 thought processes. People say puer tea needs to be aggressive, bitter, astringent, so it can have such beautiful characteristic as it ages, because it needs this crazy thing to develop. I've been buying puer. You've heard that too, right?
All the time.
I've been buying puer tea now for 12, 13 years, storing it in Seattle, California, and Taiwan. Those teas that were bitter, astringent, gave me a headache and uncomfortable 5, 10, 8 years later. Still give me those bitter, astringent, caffeinated effects. And it may be true those aggressive puers mellow out over time, but my take and experience on puer, if I'm buying it and I want a good experience in the future, is I've found teas that are lighter, softer, more aromatic, may seem light in the beginning, but because they're special kilgreen processed correctly from older trees, they don't mellow out over time. They develop and become abundant over time. So which trajectory do you want to buy into for puer? So first, the original characteristics of those teas, if they give you an ill effect, they probably will give you an ill effect in the future. It's very difficult for teas to change. There are some extremely aggressive puer teas that you can buy and they'll mellow out over time, though I don't find that interesting as an investment or a puer tea enthusiast. I'd rather buy puer tea that develops and becomes more abundant over time. So those are kind of the 2 philosophies you can think about with puer. And what I know about the different reactions to the same tea from different people, I mentioned before about the hot and cold body type. That's just one example. There's also depending on your diet. This is very true. If you drink smaller bush puerh, there's nothing wrong with small bush puerh. It can be more aggressive, more tea polyphenols. If I drink it, I become very upset stomach and caffeinated. But if you were to drink, let's say, if you would eat a whole bunch of hamburgers and French fries and pizza, I won't lie. Drinking a cup of small bush tea may be very comfortable after that meal because it's literally flushing everything out. So it does have a lot to do with diet, and this can get a little subjective, so a lot of caveats here. But if you want to purchase tea, look at your lifestyle outside of tea. Look at the person you're taking information from. Look at their lifestyle outside of tea. Does that lifestyle match? Is that lifestyle something you want?
Absolutely.
Then apply that filter to the tea or the information you receive.
Yeah, I find it so often that when I'm buying tea online now, I no longer look at cultivar or elevation. I look at who is selling the tea to me and whether or not I have jived with that person in the past. We don't have to have the same, lifestyle. Again, Jeffrey's a vegetarian. I'm not. I don't go overboard, but I'm certainly not a vegetarian. But yet, we're still going to the same conclusions, right? So I definitely agree with that.
And I do have to say, if you all eat meat, you almost should drink a little puerh tea because it's so beneficial for digestion. If you're eating meat and you drink puerh, wow, it's so amazing. A lot of Hong Kong dim sum restaurants, oily food, a lot of meats, they have a bowl of puerh in the middle, not for drinking, to wash their hands off, the oils, which will give you a good indication of ripping those oils off your hands, how it can help that digestion. So eat a little meat, it's okay. Make sure you drink that puerh tea or it's comfortable.
Right. And just to note, neither I or Jeffrey are medical professionals. This is just stuff that we've, experienced over time. I feel like it's okay for us to tell you this because we don't sell any tea. It doesn't matter to us what tea you buy. What really matters to me personally is that you drink the tea that you are supposed to be drinking because it makes you happy, right? So, try to dig deep into this stuff, take away what you can. If it doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. I'm not Chinese. I didn't grow up with traditional Chinese medicine, but just so far, it's been the only kind of system that's helped me understand these things. I do feel like a cold hot. I wish that there was more, empirical information about it in the West that we could understand. But personally speaking, it does help me understand my tea, and it helps me become extremely confident in buying a tea. Like, you could put me in a room of 10 amazing tea experts, and they give me a tea, and if I don't like it, I'm not going to buy it. Okay? And it's nothing personal. So that's what we want you to do. But yeah. So
that's a very good point. We are not medical professionals, and we are just expressing our experience. But
right.
That's why when you build your own experience with these little challenges, you notice yourself become more valuable. And what you thought was expertise and knowledge, you develop this next layer of tools on how you can build a filter.
Absolutely. And the method is just one tool, right? So if you try to use different techniques, whether you brew it every day or you have it with food, without food, at night, in the morning, you could use all these things as well. And some of you guys did practice that during the challenge. And trade notes, ask someone, hey, what did you feel about this tea? And just because they have a different opinion than you, it doesn't mean either of you are wrong. You could be two different people. You could be at two different points in your tea journey, needing different things, okay? So I think we were fine having this conversation because I trust all of you guys are very critical thinkers and super curious, and you can dig into it without just taking it at face value. So that's good. So next up on our line of questions, I was curious to ask, in the kind of perspective of puerh, since Jeffrey studies and teaches puerh, what is the connection of famous mountain teas and good leaf material to all of this? I guess now we're talking about value here, right? A little bit.
And so say that again. So connection of famous mountain teas and good leaf material. Is that particular age of tree? Is that famous mountains in general?
Yeah, so it's we had this conversation before where we were talking about how people value their teas, and it's not so much these mountains became famous because of the taste, but because of the what it does in addition, right? So
Yes.
we could talk a little bit about that.
Great. So with many of you all, dude, I talk about this subject for a long time. We've heard of famous mountains, and sometimes famous mountain teas are very expensive. And at the same time, maybe many of you heard of Lao Banzang, Yiwu, Lao Ma. These names get thrown around a lot. These are very expensive mountains. So we need to also think about what is the likelihood of that tea claiming to be from that mountain actually from that mountain. And before, in history, before 20 years ago, so 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, just with that tipping point of people starting to separate old tree and younger trees. Before, famous mountains would imply it is from old tea trees. Because in order for a tea tree to pull up the terroir or characteristics of a famous mountain, it needs to have a root structure. The roots need to be deep enough to pull up the terroir, the regional taste, the nutrition. If it is small bushes, which there's an abundant amount of small bushes now, and yes, you can get tea probably from any famous mountain because there are so much terrace, there's so many gardens all over the mountains now, famous, non-famous, there's small bushes everywhere. So usually with famous mountain, it needs to be older trees to actually experience that characteristic of the mountain. So if you're trying a lot of different famous mountains and they're all tasting kind of the same, it could be from that famous mountain, but maybe it's from small bushes. So with older tea trees from a famous mountain, there's only two reasons why a famous mountain would become famous or become expensive. One is the taste profile, meaning when I drink it, it is very pleasant. That does not mean it is unpleasant. Strong bitterness, astringency, aggressiveness are undesirable characteristics. How can a tea that's very bitter and astringent and makes me feel uncomfortable be expensive?
Right.
Just think about that. And then the second is the feeling in the body. So first is taste, second is the feeling in the body. So when I drink that tea, does it make me feel comfortable? These are the two reasons why a mountain would become famous and it would become more expensive. So there's usually a good reason why someone's paying a lot of money. If it's from a famous mountain and old tea trees and it has good taste and makes me feel comfortable, that is a very good indication it is good leaf material or good leaf quality. And I just want to say one more thing with puer. Paper never refused ink. So also keep that in mind with all of these claims. This is a difficult subject, but names, famous mountain names, are on all the wrappers. Old tea tree, ancient arbor, wild tea, crazy cha chi, on all the wrappers. When is the last time we saw a tea that says from a small bushes? So I'm not implying anything. I just want you to think about that. Over 97% of puer is from smaller trees. Over less than 3% is from ancient arbor. So once again, we're applying that thinking, 3-day rule, experience, tools, and filter. We can learn the taste. And you can go a very long time. I went a long time. I went 5 or 6 years thinking I understand old tea trees, selling old tea trees. And I found out that wasn't the case. And I have a lot of friends that have studied books of puer for 5, 10 years. They're so excited. They would say, Jeffrey, you like the puer. I want to come meet you. I paid $5,000 for a Yiwu tea. Let's drink it.
Wow, it's crazy.
And they come drink it. It's awful. The tea is awful. I cannot drink it. And so why can someone spend so much money on tea and have such, to my experience, tea I don't want to drink, yet they paid $5,000 for it? They spent so much money on this tea, and they've read so many books, that because they spend so much money, they don't feel like they can drink it 3 or 4 days or drink it every day. They save it for a once-a-year occasion.
Right.
Puer can be very difficult to understand, unfortunately. Now, green teas, black teas, oolong teas, white teas, black teas are a little different. You can get a lot of information from cupping, but puer, unfortunately, is a little different, and you do need to sit with the tea and see the reaction and feeling. So you want to separate that. If you're going to invest a lot of money into tea, really spend time with it. If you say, well, if the price is going to go up, there's only a little bit, I'm going to miss out. It's okay. You don't need to buy the best deal. You don't need to buy the most expensive. You don't need to buy the most hype. You just want to buy when you have a plan and it's most comfortable for you to purchase that tea. So don't worry about fear of missing out. There's always going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. I feel that. I feel that. I used to think, oh, I need to get that thing. It's so, unusual, and it's going to be my only chance. I'm not going to be able to get it. But now, while I still will move very quickly for a tea that I like, there will always be good tea and bad tea. And also in developing this confidence in ourselves, it's not just like a confidence boost for tea, but I firmly believe it will save you money in the long run if you're able to develop these tools for yourself. Because now Stephen and I will drink maybe 1 or 2 teas a day. They're quite expensive per gram, but it lasts us the entire day. We're comfortable. We don't fight because we're both very, stable on the tea, productive, we sleep okay. It goes beyond the flavor, right? And it just so happens that the really, really good teas that feel good always happen to taste pretty good too. It's like a bonus. So I find that there are teas that taste good, but then they feel bad. But there are teas that feel good, and then they also always happen to taste good. I never see a tea that doesn't feel good to me, or that does feel good to me, that doesn't taste amazing as well.
I have a question for you now. It's not on the line items. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
But, in your experience, we mentioned the term like good and bad, which with experience and time and applying some of these tools becomes easier to distinguish good and bad. And have you found it is more difficult, or not more difficult, to tell good from great tea rather than good from bad tea?
Wow, that's a really good question. This has actually been something we talked about a little bit during the One Tea Focus, our challenge on Discord, which we're, a lot of you are on Instagram, but you might be looking for the discussion. It's all on Discord because I encouraged all of us to kind of like type and write out without censorship, right? So a lot of it is on Discord. And it is, so far, for me at least, I can very much tell bad from great tea. I can very much tell good from bad tea. For so many years, my brain was wired to pick up flaws in tea. But the line between amazing tea and pretty good is very difficult, I would say. Extremely difficult. Because there's so many teas I can drink in one sitting, right, in one day. Like the tea that we had, it was a perfectly good tea, but I couldn't have it for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, right? And it just reminds me of, I sent an email out this morning. It's like people. There might be someone who's amazing. They have such awesome stories. You want to hang out with them for one day. They're pretty cool. But can you go on like a cruise with them, just the 2 of you, for like multiple weeks on end, It's very difficult to tell, right? So I would say for me, bad and good tea, easy. Okay, or like pretty good and fantastic tea is very difficult. Much more difficult, yeah. Well, how about you answer your own question?
This is very, I think this question. Also, while we're answering this question, everyone that's viewing now, please pop in some questions now, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end of this.
Absolutely.
And with I think this is kind of the whole journey of my life, right? Here, I'm drinking horrible, good, amazing, great, bad, just all together in a big hodgepodge, just going crazy, having a horrible experience of getting sick, blaming it on tea rather than separating the teas I'm drinking. And then I started to get here, I kind of jump into this, maybe you could say the world of great tea or rare tea, premium tea, and it became almost isolating and confusing because it was so different from everything else. And then I drank so much of that, and then I started to go, what is great tea? How do you study it? How does someone go from good to great, which is funny. It's one of my favorite books, Good to Great by Jim Collins. But this is not relevant to that at all. But you go from good to great because you have to start to apply and change the way you approach tea. It's easy for everyone to say, oh, I'm going to go to Loose Leaf Tea, I'm going to get some teaware, and I'm going to maybe do some cupping and drink some teas. Everyone can do that. But can you go to the next step of saying, how can I distinguish the small individual characteristics? And that's where tools come into play. 3-day rule, what teaware am I using? What kettle am I using? What water am I using? When you start to get particular about that, you'll notice it'll be easier to tell a difference from good to great, but it will take a long time. So you want to build those tools. And that's actually what my Patreon does. It helps people identify good and great puer, because it is so difficult and it changes so much and there's so many variables. So those small details I think is very difficult. I think it's easier for me to identify good and great raw puer. That's maybe only because I drank so much old and ancient arbor tea tree, so it becomes more experience, which comes back to the point of you may know a lot of people, and I also did know a lot of people that have studied puerh for a long time or tea for a long time, and they want to educate. Everyone has good meaning, it's great. But the question you need to ask yourself is maybe that person has experienced great tea or experienced old tea trees, but if you have not yet tried or experienced a very rare, premium, or old tea tree, no matter how much teas you drink and study, it may be difficult until you have that experience. That's why I would recommend try a lot of professional companies so you can kind of open up your opportunity to try that.
Absolutely.
Which then, once you get into that, now ripe puerh, I think is super difficult. It's super easy, good and great, easy. I mean, sorry, good and bad. But for ripe puerh, good and great is very difficult. And it just takes more and more experience and what to look for. But I think that's the next level, right? What is good to great? And that's hard to get to.
Right, right. I will say, I would say puerh is the most difficult, and that's why I'm on Jeffrey's Patreon. Okay, like, again, I'm not sponsored or anything. You know, Jeffrey is just my friend and my trusted, teacher in puerh. But I signed up for his Patreon because puerh is very difficult. It is extremely difficult. The knowledge is extremely, jumbled. So much information. You add the age of the trees, where it was stored, the year, etc. It's very difficult. But I will say that the same principles apply for other teas. So for example, with oolong, it might look like we're just looking for aromatic oolongs. But in my experience, there are also oolongs that I can last 5 days with, and oolongs I cannot last a single day with. And a lot of the same principles are the same. The really, really aromatic, amazing, punchy, oolong, people say, oh, you can't keep green oolong for more than 2 years. It's going to go stale. I think that's not correct. I think that it's badly processed, poor leaf material that cannot go up over time. So now when I'm like, wow, Jeffrey's saying this about puerh, I've seen it with oolong, white tea, black tea, to a lesser extent than puerh, but it's the same principles, which is really interesting. And same thing with the famous mountains in puerh. The famous regions for other tea types also have the same mechanisms, just from my experience that Jeffrey's talking about. So certainly puerh is very difficult. That's why, I need your help. But I've seen the same thing with other teas too. So just because you don't drink puerh as much, or if it's not your favorite tea, still apply the same principles and still apply the same method. We had remarkably consistent results during the one tea focus, even over white, black, oolong, green puerh teas, which is interesting.
And maybe if you're a little wary or unsure of puerh, even more reason to take more time before jumping into puerh.
Right, right.
Yeah. The other teas are fantastic and great place. I'm on oolong. That's how I found tea, drank tea, the aromatics, etc. The tea is beautiful. So find the tea you enjoy the most.
Right. Now I can't drink most time on oolong. There's only like a handful. But there's a good tea of every category, just in my experience. It just takes a long time to find it. And what I would like for all of you to do is do it faster than I did. That's all. Took us like you 12 years, 13 years, Jeffrey, and then me like 11 going on 12 now. So if you just take our combined 28 years and make it this 2 years, I'm going to be so happy for you. Get on the way faster. So thank you again so far for you guys for joining us. We've asked for some questions. If you have any questions that you thought about after this, maybe DM me and maybe we'll be able to answer. But let's go to the questions on live. We have 10 minutes left. Delphine, who did 5 days with a shang puerh during this challenge. Do you think doing the same one tea focus or 3-day challenge plus with the same tea during a different season would have different results? Could a tea feel bad simply because it's not the good season for that tea? I like that question a lot.
You want me to answer that? You want to answer that?
I mean, I would ask for you to answer it. I can chime in afterwards, but
yes, have a big effect. And now this is just another thing to consider and think about. Teas that tend to be less oxidized, green teas, greener, high mountain oolongs, tend to be better drinking in hotter weather because they help you tolerate the heat. Going back to that cooling, heating aspect. Even if you don't understand cool and hot body, let's forget that. Green teas tend to help cool down the body or help you tolerate the heat. So if you drink a cup of green tea in really hot weather, you might notice why I feel so comfortable. and that's for raw puer. Raw is much better to drink in hotter weather, spring and summer. Best time, the aromatics, everything to come out. With ripe puer or roasted oolongs, baked oolongs, red teas, those have a heating component. Just meaning if you drink a black, red oolong, baked oolong, or ripe puer in the winter, you may notice you feel a little warm, you feel very comfortable. So the time you drink the tea will have a big effect on the outcome.
I would agree with that. It just depends, right? So in like the traditional Chinese medicine sense, again, I'm not Chinese, nor have I studied it, but I gravitate to it because it helps me understand, like, why do I feel so horrible with this tea? Or why am I cold? Why am I hot? It's the only thing I've found so far that can help me. And in theory, you know, you drink cooling teas when it's warm to help you balance, and you drink warming teas when it's cold. So even if traditional Chinese medicine seems very far away, it's kind of common sense, right? Roasty tea when it's cold, and then nice refreshing tea when it's warm. But the thing is, I think if you can find the breaking point for your tea, I think that's another good thing. Shoan and Noah from Floating Leaves talk about this. Can you figure out where your tea will fail you? And so I tend to be cold, but it's summer outside, so it's warm, right? The shang puer should be cooling. So summer and shang should go pretty well. There's no excuse for the tea if it makes me feel bad. Now, if it's during the winter, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try it when it's a different kind of season. So don't be afraid to do things that might result in a bad result. It might be miserable for you for the 4 days, like it was for me. For the one shang that did not agree with me, shang agrees with me for some reason. But don't be afraid to test out to see, even in things that are not ideal. You know what I mean? So do shang during summer, do shang during winter, do roasted oolong during the summer, do roasted oolong during the winter. It's okay. The tea won't bite you for very long.
And
it might bite you for a time, but
and the 3-day rule is also on the assumption we're preparing the tea to reach its full potential. So water temperature, steep time, we're assuming all of those things are correct. And if you're still learning about a tea reaching its breaking point, whether in weather or actually brewing the tea, if you're unsure, start with a lower temperature and short steep time. Each steep afterwards, or each time you revisit the tea, increase the temperature by 3 or 4 or 5 degrees and increase the steep time by a few seconds until you see that breaking point, meaning tasty, comfortable, bitter, astringent, tasty, comfortable to bold of a strong flavor. So use those variables. And
right.
We'll get a few more questions here.
Yeah. So Tea Blossom says, do you also eat organic food? Does the food you eat affect the way you taste tea? I think that's a great question because we have different answers for this one.
All right, we'll be pretty quick on these ones. So I eat organic for the most part. I would say 80%. I used to be extreme, now I'm not. I think there needs to be moderation. I think you should eat healthy, my own opinion. This is not medical advice. You should eat healthy 80 to 90% of the time, not an entire 100% diet. You should have a little balance, but I eat organic about 80% of the time, and I'm vegetarian. And I used to not eat a lot of garlic and onion, but recently I've started to eat a little bit more garlic and onion because I noticed those two ingredients are very strong on the palate, and they can affect the tasting of the tea, especially after a meal. I learned that technique through my Korean Buddhist master, who they do not eat garlic and onion because it affects their meditation. And I noticed if you eat a meal with strong garlic and onion or meat and immediately drink tea after, it's hard to distinguish the taste profiles of that tea, though easy to understand the digestive benefits of that tea. So I do about 80% organic, or as best I can, and I'm vegetarian, and that does affect my body by making it more sensitive to what I'm drinking.
Okay. So for me, very different. I grew up, I'm Filipino, we like fried food, okay? Like extremely heavy, extremely lush and rich food that is good for the heart in theory, but not good for the heart in practice. So I grew up in a culture with like, we eat really heavy food. What's interesting is that in trying to study tea, it has been pushing me towards becoming more mindful about what I eat. And this is the truth. Like I don't have anything, no other motives to say this, but tea has forced me to reevaluate how I feel about food. So it's almost like a different approach to it. So while in the past I didn't care about organic food, organic tea, I didn't care. Now I do because it has required me to. I cannot drink unclean tea. I just cannot. I cannot make myself. And now I'm starting to feel that same way about food. So very different.
Good.
You can
It's a good perspective. You all can see. Everyone knows it.
But even if you don't drink organic food, it does, or eat organic tea, still do this and see what the tea does to you. See where the tea takes you. I'm very happy with the tea takes me. I just follow what it wants me to do. Yeah. One more question. If I didn't get to your question, I saw it. I will DM you after this. But RB Ceramic says there's also the wet dry on top of warm cold. I heard in Taiwan roasted oolongs are preferred in the wet season because it takes away the humidity away from the bones. If it's okay, Jeffrey, I'll answer this question just really quick since it is Taiwan roasted oolong. I'm sure Jeffrey has one, but I want to have some time to close out. From what I understand, asking traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, dampness is supposed to be bad for the body for some reason. And people are always trying to get that wetness or dampness away. And certainly in Taiwan, people do love the roasted oolongs during the wet season. But it is not just about the tea type, it's also about the specific tea. So you might have a good roasted oolong and you have a bad roasted oolong. More so than the processing, the leaf material makes a big difference to me. So I would rather have a lightly oxidized oolong from clean leaves than a highly roasted oolong from conventional leaves. So one of my favorite teas is a light oxidized oolong. Supposedly it's supposed to be bad for your stomach, doesn't age well, etc. But it's from clean leaves and it sits well with me. So it depends more on the tea, case by case, I would say. Yeah. So far, thank you so much again for joining us, Jeffrey. So much information, so much detail. Yeah, I would highly recommend anyone, if anything resonated with you, to at least check out Jeffrey's YouTube channel and his Patreon. Again, we don't have some kind of like sponsorship partnership. I really trust him. And I would like for you to see for yourself if the information resonates with you. If anything, it's good to have it there. As much information as you can for your tea journey is, I think better.
And there's a lot of good free information on my Instagram. Actually, if you dive deep into my Instagram, this looks like photos. But if you read the descriptions, like go back a month, a lot of them were like blog posts when I was studying for the last 2 years with Puer. A lot of kind of hidden gems in there. There's also a free Facebook group. There's Tea Curse's Discord, which is a fantastic way to connect with others. I also just released a new YouTube video about doing an in-depth comparison of food.
I am so jealous of that kettle. I like it a lot.
So you can look at what's the best electric kettle for loose leaf tea. And also feel free to submit and comment on some of those videos to find out what videos you want to see in the future. And then if you do want to take that jump into Puer, then maybe consider and look into that Patreon. Otherwise, just kind of watch, observe, join our live streams, interact with the community, learn more, and drink more tea. Be happy to drink good tea.
Yeah, just take your tea journey as it is. I would, what I think Jeffrey does for us as a community is he does not sell puer in a community full of educators who sell tea. And that's not a bad thing. It's a different perspective. But because he's not trying to sell us puer, we're able to get an objective opinion on it that may have not been seen from the vendor's perspective. One or the other is not bad. But I think if you're trying to learn about tea, the more diverse your sources are, the more critically you think about them, the better. So,
and that's this inspired the Patreon. I wanted to I wanted to have a product supported by people rather than a sale of a product. So that's how it kind of came to be.
Right, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us, you guys. You can find Jeffrey at Jeffrey H. McIntosh. This replay should go up on IGTV. If not, then absolutely on YouTube. If you'd like to watch this replay again or tag someone who might, benefit from this conversation. If you have any questions, thoughts, please share them with us. I personally learned so much from you guys and what your experiences are. Tea is an ongoing conversation. It's not facts. It's not a written book. We need to keep writing the book. You know what I mean? Yeah. Closing thoughts, Jeffrey. Anything else?
No, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for being awesome in the community, spreading the word. Thanks for having me on. I'm very lucky and fortunate to be connected with people like you. So yeah, looking forward. Take care, everyone.
We're fortunate to have you and everyone here. We learn better together, So thank you. Have a nice Saturday, everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Goodbye.